Authenticity. The concept is held high. Be authentic. Be true to yourself. You do you. But in a world where we're rewarded for fitting in, it's not always easy to do that. And yet, when you overcome the fear and worry, and when you learn what being authentically you actually means, and you confidently embrace that, you will find the freedom of it to be both powerful and productive. You're listening to the Positively Living podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Zawrotny, founder of Positively Productive Systems and a coach certified in time and stress management, helping clients make space for what matters most in their lives. Join me each episode and we'll talk about decluttering, stress management, habits, personalized productivity, gratitude, and so much more. I understand the overwhelm of life because I'm a wife, mom to kids and cats, and a former caregiver. I'm here to help you choose what's right for you so you can do less, live more, and breathe easier. Sound good? Let's get to it. Today, I welcome Mallory Schlabach to the Positively Living podcast to talk about authenticity in life and business. Mallory Schlabach is a marketing strategist with over a decade of experience guiding 6- and 7-figure businesses. As an IPEC certified business coach, she coaches female business owners to rapidly grow their business with bold marketing moves. She's the proud mama of 4 humans under the age of 11, a toilet paper eating dog, and a wife to her best friend Drew. She will request tacos as her last meal, and every Tuesday, of course. One of the things that her clients love about her is she's able to create custom, totally legit strategies using hard data and draw from her experience as Chief Marketing Officer with clients around the world to create marketing strategies that work with less effort and bigger results. I can tell you from personal experience how accurate this is, all of it. And keeping it real, it was Mallory's authenticity that encouraged me to work with her. After all, there are a lot of marketing coaches out there, but there was a connection I had with her that made it seem like she was the right one for me. And I was right. If you've listened to other episodes or followed me for any length of time, you'll see authenticity is something I strive for and appreciate in others as well. If it seems like that comes easily, it's only because I'm practiced at it. I've had to work at it, understanding not just who I am and how I want to show up, but also how I best show up and how I resonate with people and connect with them. Mallory and I cover a lot of ground in this conversation, in part because she speaks fast, like New Yorker fast, but also because we both feel passionately about this topic, and as you'll see, Mallory exudes authenticity and passion and shares so many good tips today. She shares how authenticity makes life easier and how it's almost like turning on a magnet inside yourself. You draw the right people in and you also repel the wrong ones. It should be noted that this kind of filtering is what I call decluttering. Also, authenticity is freeing, which means you feel lighter, happier, and you can make decisions faster and be more confident in your actions, which is productivity in a nutshell. So how do you start being more authentic? Mallory says get curious, which you know I love. Reflect a bit, which is important to do whether you're starting a new year, a new chapter in your life, or even a new project. Figure out why you respond the way you do and what actions make you feel off. You'll be able to make connections to what is authentic and what isn't for you, and make small changes from there. In this conversation, we also dig into the topic of how authentic is too authentic. How much do we share with others? The short answer is it's a personal choice, but Mallory's reflection on this is something you don't want to miss. Throughout the interview, Mallory shows just how authentic she truly is by sharing, in her words, the crappiest answer ever, and also by giving 2 answers to my questions about dance songs and quotes. You will love her answers too, so be sure to listen to the end for that. There are many times when authenticity can be funny, and this is one of those times. I highly recommend you check out Mallory's Marketing Magic podcast, which you can find on MallorySchlabach.com/podcast, and it's MallorySchlabach.com. And also join her on social media. Her favorite place to be is Facebook, and she hosts an amazing group for women in business called the Girl Boss Club. If you are a woman in business, come join us. You won't be disappointed. Before we head to the interview, I want to thank you for being here with me for this episode and others, for sharing your precious time with me and appreciating my authenticity. I hope you are inspired today to own and share yours. Welcome, Mallory Schlabach, to the Positively Living podcast. Mallory, we've been connected for a couple years now, but if you measure it in terms of bonding, it feels a lot longer. And we first connected through your Marketing Magic podcast, where I get to claim first guest and first episode.
Yes.
And we became Insta besties, bonding over many things, and not the least of which, tacos.
And your love of sour cream.
Well, yeah, that too, because again, it goes on everything. So, and we began working together. You are my marketing coach to this day, and your guidance has been a game changer for me.
Oh, thank you.
Your marketing wisdom is off the charts. And the best part is that every conversation we have is flat out fun.
It
so
is.
I'm seriously stoked that we are recording one for the Positively Living listeners. So welcome.
Thank you. I mean, I feel like this podcast has been a long time in coming for you. I feel like you're born for this. So I'm so excited to be on your podcast and to talk, and it's going to be fantastic.
Yay. So why don't we start now by turning the tables and finding a bit more about you. I'd love to know, in your words, a bit about who you are, who you help, and what lights you up.
Oh, those are like deep questions, Lisa. Okay, so who I am. I mean, surprisingly, I am talking very slow right now. So I will speed it up eventually, but I'm a fast talker from North Carolina, and I have 4 crazy kids. I eat, sleep, breathe, marketing, data, writing, all those things. I feel like I've done it forever. And I think I found my passion in helping moms. Especially, that was kind of where I started, was 4 years ago, is like I knew that I just couldn't only be a stay-at-home mom. I've always worked. And so I was like, how do I find my strengths and still be a good mom? Like, that's kind of like a lot of the battle for a lot of us who are moms who are doing this. And then it expanded into like, well, how do I help just women find their purpose? Like beyond just moms, how do I help women really, really own their spot and on what they do? And so I felt like I was able to actually mesh what I love to do and what I'm good at with what I'm also passionate about helping. And that's just helping women own their roles as bosses in their communities and helping them grow a business that they love, to have the life they love. And I just happen to do that through marketing.
And you happen to do it beautifully, and it lights you up, and you can tell that it lights you up. And that leads us perfectly into what the natural topic of our conversation needed to be, which is authenticity.
Yeah.
And it's how we bonded in the first place. It's the reason why, of all the marketing coaches in all the world, I was like, yeah, Mallory's mine, because it made sense. It felt like you got me and you understood me. And of course, I am already planning to link to that episode on your podcast. And that was where Mallory talked me through what I was doing and really answered the question, am I doing the right things for my business?
Yeah.
And in that rather simple conversation, and again, we can't discount simple because it's what works. We hit upon something that really was magical, and it's something I've carried with me ever since, which was the idea of how do I best show up and resonate with people? And I think that's why you said, knowing me as you do, that this podcast is it for me, because this is how, not in writing. And that was the thing. It was like, yes, you're a good writer, but you need to have conversations with people, Lisa. And you are absolutely right.
I think one thing I really love about what I do, and I think a lot of people can say this about their roles in their own business too, is like shining the light back at people that you see, because I think we just can't see what we're really good at. We just can't see our strengths in the same way that everybody else around us does. And so, I mean, it was very, I hope people go back and listen to that first episode on my podcast with you, because I like immediately I was like, oh my gosh, you have like your voice. It's amazing. Like you just have this thing about, it's not even just your voice. It's the whole aura. It's just the energy you project. It's just like, woof, like warmth, and like people just have to be around you. And so I just, you're easy. Let's be honest. I was like, okay, she needs to talk. She needs to be a coach for sure. She needs to do that. Like, it was easy for me to see it because you just exude it. And I think you're a really, really star pupil because you show up exactly how you are everywhere. And when you do that, it makes everything so much easier, just in life, period. Not even talking about business and like how you show up for a brand, but like when you can be really, really you with everybody in your life, I think it cuts out that drama.
Oh, it does. Well, for starters, it goes back to like this concept when we say, don't lie because then you have to remember the lie. Well, I think
Right.
that can kind of apply to authenticity, because if you're trying to put on a persona, or you're trying to be one way here and another way there, you have to remember what way you are. And also it doesn't feel good.
Right.
Right.
And I kind of feel like you can tell me your opinion too, but I kind of feel it takes you maybe even getting into your 30s, your 40s to even really truly be willing to be like, oh, this is who I am. Like I feel like in your 20s, you kind of wrestle with who you are and you try on all the hats and all the things. But like, I think it does take time to sit and own who you are. And the faster you're willing to do that, if you want to work it out and you're 22, please do that. But I really think a lot of us struggle with that as women, to be like, that's who I am. I don't have to put on this perfect, person all the time and show up. And like, I think a lot of times we delude ourselves, honestly, to be like, this is who I think I am. But then in the inside, you're like beating yourself up, right? Because your inside doesn't match this external persona you've created. And then it's this rat race to like always keep it up, right? And then you have this war. And that's why authenticity comes in so much at play, is because that's what's crying out from you, right? Like you're going to have that peace and that ease in what you do when you're just you. And people love you for you, right? Like you think people like you now, just wait till you show up as yourself.
Yeah, it's so true that there's a correlation with age. I think mostly because, as you said, there's a lot of trial and error that may need to happen. And of course, yeah, if you're in your 20s, oh my gosh, I'm so rooting for you to figure this out faster than I
Yes,
did.
yes.
And then there's also some level of confidence that may come with experience. I'm definitely even higher than you mentioned. And I'm like, this is me, baby, and that's a wonderful feeling to have, but it is not easy. And I do think we struggle as women. I think too, that we want to be authentic because it sounds so good, be authentic, but
Right. It's like the buzzword right now.
sure, absolutely. But it's scary. It's
Mm-hmm.
scary because let's face it, we all have this. I mean, it's that Sally Field moment, like they like me. They really like me. I felt that way about the podcast, but
Yeah.
it's like, we all have that feeling of, I want to be liked, and so what if they don't like me? And as you said, you show up as you, people will like you because it's the right people. It's your people.
Right. And that's what makes all the difference. And I think that's why, like, I'm so passionate about making sure, like, what I say you need for marketing is you got to have like your offer and what you actually do. You got to know how to tell people about it. But the magic is your personality. You got to show up as you in your brand and whatever that looks like. And that's what makes marketing so magical. And so if you can learn how to really turn that on and use that to your advantage in everything you do, it's like putting on an old shoe. It just becomes more comfortable, more natural. You start doing it everywhere. And I think the more we practice that and we kind of peel back those layers, even if it's like by yourself in meditation or journaling, if you just start to kind of peel back who you are, why you make the choices you do, or why are you even just feeling that way? I think I am a type 3 on the Enneagram. We do not do feelings, people. We don't buttoned up, no feelings, right? But the more I have to peel back those feelings, I'm like, why? Why? I had to keep asking myself, why do I keep showing up like that? Or why do I keep feeling that? And the more I answer those questions, the more I'm like, mm-hmm,
Mm-hmm.
man, I got to learn. I got to keep my mouth shut and learn things about myself when I can ask and peel back those layers.
And I love what you're describing here because it's a topic concept that comes up so much in the podcast and everywhere else that I'm coaching, which is the idea of getting curious.
Oh, yes.
Right? And when you're
Yeah.
curious, you're not being judgmental. And that's so important that they're not existing at the same time. This is not about judgment. And that's the whole point. If you want to get to authenticity, you can't be all judgy. It's
Right.
like,
Because the
right?
opposite of authenticity, I mean, I think shame drags you down. You got shame in your
Absolutely.
life. You can't be authentic.
Right. And so if you're curious and you're like, well, what does make me tick and what does make me happy and why is that the case? And or why am I struggling to show that side of me and
Yeah.
things like that. Now, have you tended to naturally be authentic in this path or have you struggled a bit? And if so, did you have like a turning point? How's it been for you?
I think honestly, part of it was a couple. So I have always had this like, I mean, you can't really see me on video right now, like fun, bubbly, always doing stuff, always doing all the things. That's why I'm a 3. Always just having this put together life and feeling and go, 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 go. And I remember a couple of years ago, I was asking my friend because I was like, I can't remember who it was. It was like a sister-in-law. It was some relative, I swear. I was like, I don't think they like me. And she was like, it's not that. I think they're intimidated by you. And I was like, say what? And she was like, yeah, like think about it. And I was like, but that's not me. Like if she knew me and she was like, well, maybe you're too perfect on the outside. And that was kind of the start of me starting to analyze, like, to me, it was just how I'd always been. Like, I knew my feelings. I knew what I was jacking up. Like I knew all the like cracks in the veneer. But if I don't show that or talk about that, then I think it is really easy for people to only see the highlight reels, right? It's like we have that love hate with Facebook because I'm like, I know that's not what you and your husband actually do, right? When you see people like posting all that stuff, like that's not how you really feel. So I think that was kind of the first step was like having that light bulb moment of like, oh, well, I don't want to just project that. I know that's kind of my default, but I do need to be real with people. And what does that look like? And then when you start to think back more, it's like, well, who am I not real with too? It's like makes you analyze your relationships and your friendships and your acquaintances and like, who am I showing up for them and why? Because then again, it goes back to the whole why, right? Why? Like why this group and not that group? What makes me feel safe, to do those things versus the other and that kind of thing.
Yeah, those are key words right there. Safety and trust. And yeah, when you're trying to figure out what it's okay to say. And I think when you're curious and you're asking those questions, you may find those answers like, well, when I did this or I shared this part about me, I got this backlash or I got this judgment or I got these responses. And I do think we tend to learn what groups or what places or what people we can share certain things with.
Right.
And that's also why I love the communities that we've built, especially online as businesswomen, how you and I connected in the first place, where we can find it's like sort of matching up. And that's where authenticity comes in,
Yeah.
is that we get to match up. I mean, and Mallory's even like she's from a southern state compared to me, but she talks as fast as a New Yorker. So the two of us can have 2 conversations for the price of one. I mean, it's fabulous. But again, it's those moments of connectivity and bonding and understanding that help us not only relate to each other, but even hasten the work that we do together. And I think when people start to understand those things about you, it's incredibly important for life and business. And speaking of which, that idea of being a little fearful, not being sure what to share, and there's this sort of pendulum swinging, right? Especially in marketing of keep it real, and I'm all about that. Almost maybe too real sometimes,
Right.
but I want people to understand. I get it. I've been there. We're walking this together. Maybe I'm a few steps ahead of you, but that's the whole point. I've learned enough to help. I've seen online that you tend to freely share your life, your family life and your business together and kind of let that overlap. But
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on that and how much to share, let's say?
Yeah. I mean, I remember starting out in the online space because I think it does feel really different, the online space versus face-to-face, any relationship too. I feel like there's this like open thing, like I can share anything online, right? Like you just have this, you're way more willing for some reason. And I remember hearing this, I can't remember, some big guru thing had said like, don't share when you're going through it, share when you're on the other side. And I was like, but that didn't really sit right with me because I think that kind of goes like, Granted, I think there are really, really hard things in your life you will go through, and you don't necessarily need to be like documenting every step of the way. Like
Mhm.
this is and this is this. And I know people who do that, and you're like, whoa, I'm still watching, but whoa, right? Like there's like a weird voyeurism. And I think that's the like when you have that line, it's how do you show up as yourself, but not be so raw that it's painful for you and for anybody else watching. Because I think there's a difference between like a bleeding wound and a real wound, if that makes sense. And so it's learning for yourself. One, like I think everybody has their own line,
Mhm.
what they're willing to share and what they want to share. But I know, like going back to that like mantra, whatever, recommendation I'd heard, it was like, there's a point too where people don't know what's real and what's not real online. And so there is a point where you do have to be a little bit more authentic and be a little bit more explicit in how you tell your stuff or tell the back end story, because they can just get the highlight reel and they can just see all this stuff. And so I think that's where it gets dangerous with people, especially if they're following you for their stuff. They buy into this, they drink the Kool-Aid,
Mhm.
and they don't get the whole picture. And so then they get, jaded, or they get disenfranchised, or there's things start to happen. You're like, if you just would have been on, like, just shown a little bit more honesty or a little bit more transparency in what was happening or what we were going through, it would have changed the dynamic of the relationship with your people, with your followers. And so I think it's a little bit of a tightrope you have to walk yourself, but just knowing there is a too much line, and it just kind of depends on who you are and how you typically show up for people.
Yeah, and perhaps what you're going through and what your comfort
Right.
level is. And when you start to get to know your people, you also know what they need to hear. And yeah, as part of this is also a trial and error to figure out what resonates. I know for me personally, it was a challenge as I started to share my story more of my evolution into becoming a coach, is sharing my caregiver story and
Yeah.
the really, really difficult time I went through. And I could feel every time I was on a podcast interview and describing it, I had to pause because I was at war with myself. How much am I sharing? How much am
Yeah.
I saying? It was so hard. And then I kept thinking, okay, I am on the other side at this point, and it wasn't like I didn't want to share it then. I just shared it in a different way. And I think your point about how raw it is, and also how much bandwidth you need to get through it, by the way.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
you need to be focusing more on that than documenting, although, we are in a documentary society. So
Right.
again, personal choice. But for me, telling that story now, I actually have to say out loud, I want to share this to honor the people who are going through it now and who may be going through it.
Right.
Even though I'm beyond it and I can see the good in it and I can see the gratitude, of having gone through this and being able to bring the light from the dark, and I can process it all, 50,000 feet kind of thing, as
Right.
opposed to when I was right there in it. I still have to remember that there are people who might listen to this story that need to know,
Yeah.
oh, it was bad.
Absolutely. And I think a perfect example that came out today when we're recording this, Chrissy Teigen and John Legend,
Yes.
announced that they lost their son today,
Yeah.
and had the most gut-wrenching in the moment pictures
Yes.
in the hospital bed with their son, and her sobbing, like taken to like that she posted. Because at first I was like, who would post these pictures of such anguish? And I was like, she shared them. Like she shared them herself.
Yeah.
um and like for some people, that would be like, I would never share that. That's a line I wouldn't cross.
Hmm.
But that's her MO. Like, she is willing to do the hard conversations, and she attracts the people who are like, somebody out there right now needs to see that picture, right?
Right.
And a good friend of ours, Irina Miller, was just on my podcast, and we had this kind of the same conversation. And she was like, you have to know that your story and what you're going through is never a loss. It may not be pleasant, but it's never a loss. There's always something being done in the purpose of the story and the purpose of your experience and why you are where you are. And so I like that you say that too, is like what you went through, even though you may never wish on anybody else, you may never want to go through it again. Now there's a purpose to it, right? It's not just something like a dark blip on your history. And so I think it's figuring out, what does that look like for
Yeah.
you too?
Yeah. Oh, I'm excited to listen to your episode with Irina, and she's absolutely right. Finding that meaning in that story that you've gone through, the thing that you've gone through, especially when it comes to hardships. I've been reflecting on this lately because when you do that, and sometimes the meaning can be, I'm sharing it authentically and someone else needs to hear it. Sometimes that's the meaning.
Right.
But when you have that meaning, that helps you recover from it. It helps you be more resilient when you can give purpose, especially to the hard things. And I did see that post about Chrissy Teigen, and my heart broke for them. But then I thought, my word, what a gift to share that so openly.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there's someone out there, many someones, who need to see that and need to feel it and to know that they're not alone.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think like it kind of highlights another aspect of, that I talk about in marketing, this whole authenticity thing is you want people to love you or hate you, right? Not like hate, right? But like you do want to repel people. And that's all the honesty line, and try to say honesty, not like you're dishonest, but that like transparency line too is a filter, whether you believe it or not. Like some people honestly can't handle the hard things. They can't handle some of that raw messiness, and that's okay. That means they weren't for you, because if you have to cover up that part of who you are, then it was never meant to be for you anyway. It's like that just, it just eradicates this whole authenticity conversation.
Absolutely. I can remember times when I was living life in the corporate world and I felt that. And I felt so uncomfortable that I couldn't be who I was, expressing the dreams that I had. I'm not even talking about anything big and raw or
Right.
scandalous or anything. It was like I got into voiceover work and I was excited about it. But, don't bring up the fact that you have your own business or you're doing something else besides that job. And it was definitely this sort of I don't know, almost wanted to say oppression. It was this real feeling of
Yeah.
like not being able to be true to who you are. But
Mm-hmm.
I like what you're saying about you don't want people to hate you. You want people to like you. But in business, especially, no, actually, I'm going to take that back and say in life, you're looking for friends. You want friendships. You
Right.
want real friendships.
Like we all have had that friend where you like
Yeah.
put on your best behavior because you never know what they're going to do or say when they leave. Like we all have people like that we don't need them in our lives. We are
Yeah.
old enough to say bye. Like I don't need you in my life, and that's okay.
Yeah. And so I just want to highlight here that what Mallory is talking about is a type of decluttering.
Decluttering friendships. That's what we're working on
Yeah.
next, folks.
Yeah, yeah. Next episode, decluttering friendships. But really,
Could
yes.
be an episode actually.
Actually, well, we there was toxic positivity with Valerie Friedlander. Shout out to Valerie.
Oh,
So
she's
that's
fantastic.
right. So that
Yeah.
was awesome. With that's along those lines. But yeah, this idea that we have to think about who we want, whether it's friends, or clients, customers in our lives. Who do we want? Who makes sense? Who belongs? That filter you're talking about. Yeah. The more authentic we are, the more we naturally filter. And
Yeah.
that's just good for us all around.
And I think a lot of what we've talked about so far is really kind of the external thing, what we put out into the world, but it also, crosses over into what you believe about things.
Yes.
Like that also has a boundary and a border, and you still, even if you don't always like aren't vocal about it, like right now we're in the middle, right, of messy politics. I'm not going to go into politics,
Right.
but that is like a, fuse right now for people. And so sometimes it's even, you may not want to be vocal about that right now, but it does help you figure out like, who do I want to work with? How do people treat other people? Like those are all things that I think we're asking ourselves right now, just in relationships and with the craziness that's happened in America this year. And like, come on, 2021, let's have a different role. But there's been so much this year, which I know you've covered in your podcast.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing. Like we're actually looking down, not even just how do we act around people, but what do we think? What do we feel? How do we treat people? How does that line up with how I treat and feel and want to treat people and that kind of thing?
Yeah. And, as we discover that authenticity that really belongs to us, not what we think other people think, not what we think we should, we're clearing out all that clutter. And that's great when you step into a new year, but really any new day, it's great to be reflecting on this.
Yeah.
And when you start to get clear on that, you will find that some of those things like that discomfort that you feel sometimes, or when it doesn't feel right in your gut, that fades away. And that's that misalignment. You're absolutely right that it's also on the inside too,
Yeah.
that you are, and again, another buzzword, but it's important for a reason. What we mean by alignment is you have these values, these beliefs, the way you want to live. Are you acting in accordance with that? And when you hide something that's authentic to you, it, your your whole being might just feel like, oh, something's not right. And it's
Yeah.
because it's the whole concept of, here's another phrase for the books, being true to yourself. But that's what we're talking about. And
Right.
how when you don't do it, it can feel off, and then things don't work right.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and then you're like, what's going on?
And then you're like, oh, I'm just not being productive, I'm lazy, I'm this, I'm that. I'm like, no.
Oh, weird spiral. Yes.
Yeah, right. No, but
It is.
ask me how I know,
Yeah,
because
no.
because these
Ask
are
me
the
why I'm laughing.
yeah. Because not only I've probably done it to myself, but I also talk about this with my clients all the time. And
Oh,
if I do say so myself, that was rather a good segue to talk about how being authentic, how we can go about it and how it can really help us be more productive. And so I'll take the first shot and say, and you tell me what you think, that I think that when we show up who we are, when we hit this authenticity right, it makes us so much more efficient in what we're doing, because we get clear on what we're saying to people, and the right people find us faster. Would you
yeah,
agree?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely agree. It's almost like a magnet gets turned on for you. Like you can't describe it and you're like, why is everything happening? And I'm sure Irene and our other woo-woo friends, because we both know I'm not super woo-woo,
Mm-hmm.
but I am curious about the woo-woo. But there's got to be some term, some energetic something happening. There's some vibrate something. I don't know the terms, but there's something going on when like you're all in alignment. That's got to be attracting the people to you. And I think too, it's just something about you're free. Like you've cast off all that stuff that, I don't think we necessarily even know how much we're holding on until we're past it. We don't know how much baggage we're carrying and all the thoughts we're carrying and all the, all the guilt, all the things we're carrying internally and externally, until we release that and let that go. And like, metaphorically or physically, all literally, all those things. And so I think you're absolutely right. There is something that happens when I think you're happier. I think you make decisions faster because you are in alignment. I think you worry less because you already have the people around you that are helping you make those better decisions and making you feel happier. I think a lot of the times when we get out of alignment, we kind of get into that whole like comparison mode and jealousy mode and doubting mode. And then we just go down this nasty spiral. So this is totally random. I feel like it's a good image. So my kids and I studied Mexico today at homeschool. That was our day. We're going through North America right now. And we're learning about Mexico. Of course, we had Mexican Day, bought a piñata. It's amazing. But I digress. Part of it was this feature landmark in Mexico is called the Cave of Swallows. And it's the deepest sinkhole in the world. It can like house the Empire State Building in it. And so we watched all these like planet Earth videos of people just like free diving into this dark black hole. Right. And so I think there's this this thing too, like that, like, I think once you kind of get started in this whole downward spiral, it's like taking this free fall into the Cave of Swallows. Like it was like we were all literally like, I can't believe they just jumped off into that dark hole. I'm gonna have to send you the links now to the videos, Lisa.
Yeah, totally. I may even
Like,
have to put them in the show notes.
right. And like the people and like not the people, but this like it houses like a ridiculous amount of birds in this thing. And so what they had talked about and what our study was that the birds, it's so big, they literally spiral to get out of there. That's how they have to get out, is they have to spiral all the way up out of the cave. And so I think it's a great metaphor for when you fall in, people kind of spiral down too. Like I don't know what it is. Like someone who's really smart about geology probably tell us. But that's what happens, I think, when we're out of alignment. We're into this dark, we just get sucked in and we get down, we can't get out of it, we can't see the light because we're in this dark hole. And so when you kind of cast that off and really just own who you are, I think it also gives you confidence and you're not scared. You're not scared to make decisions that you need to be making or you should have made. You just own it and you keep going.
I love it. And I love that you said own it. And again, another phrase you might hear sometimes, but it's for a reason, because when you own something, you claim it.
Yeah.
And when you claim it, you are saying very clearly to everyone, this belongs to me. Yep, that's who I am. It's like, do I love sour cream? Yes. Am I like all about the coffee? You know it. And the best part, and I know this happens with you, I think this is a good little addition here, is that when that authenticity comes through to people, when they're registering who you are, they get it. And especially, I guess, in business, this would be a case for you and for me. People start to send stuff to you that belongs with what you're coming across, even if it's something funny. Okay, I'm using lightweight things like, my love of coffee, your love of tacos. I mean, I love
Yes.
them too, but it's like, but what do? I send you funny gifs and pictures and memes and stuff of tacos, right? And I have people sending me stuff relating to coffee and tagging me in things. And even on a sweeter note, my husband recently sent me a quote from Rumi. It was about I can't remember the exact quote, but it's the idea of that I was, intelligent and I wanted to change the world, but I became wise and
Yes.
learned to change myself. And he sent that to me and said that, feels like positively productive systems. And I was like, not only is it, but I've already posted that. I have a branded image that I share of that. And he said, okay, your marketing's working, and it's like, I, it's, it's a, it's such a good moment. It's such a good feeling to be like, they get it.
And I think even if it's like a light heart, like a light joke, like tacos or coffee, like it's that exact thing you're saying. Like it's people who get you, people who've noticed you, people who noticed even the crazy tiny things like tacos. Like I had a strategy call recently with someone. It was like a 60-minute call. I ran into her like on a different call a couple months later, and she was like, "How are the tacos?" I'm like, like I mentioned it for 1 second to give her an illustration about something,
Mm-hmm.
and the fact that stuck with her, even though it's super random, has nothing to do with what I do, but like that stood out to her, which means more than just that stood out to her, right? Like
Yes.
people can't just know you in a vacuum. They can't just know I'm the taco person, right? They're going to remember other things that are attached to what I said around those conversations and how I behave and how I show up. And so that means something, right? It means I think that's how that whole traction thing works. It means people are paying attention. It means you're drawing people in. It means they care and they're noticing and they're showing up for you.
And when you're sharing things like that are random, I mean, I think just on a psychological level, I'm imagining, not an expert on this, but it's that kind of thing where it catches their attention. It's perhaps even like a mnemonic device to remember that Mallory's
Yeah.
about the tacos. And
Right.
then you can extrapolate from there and be like, what? Oh, she was, we were talking about marketing and this came up. And so I would say like on a deeper level, it can also happen too, in addition to some of these sweet things. The other thing that happens a lot when people have the opportunity to say, okay, what's Lisa about? And keeping in mind, of course, I started as a professional organizer, went into productivity and life coaching and stress management. And what do they say? They say gratitude. And I was like, oh, that's so sweet. That's wonderful. I love that they've made that connection. I must
Yes.
speak enough about it that, they're making that connection. And what a beautiful thing to attribute to me. So
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
I think that's a good test too, even just like what am I putting like what are people reporting back to me about me? Like how am I showing up? What am I saying? What am I about? Where are my priorities? I think that's a good, a way to kind of gauge, not that they're always right? But I
Yeah.
think sometimes what we put out there, we don't realize how much is being absorbed by others and what they're really gathering about us.
Yeah, or what we're putting out there, which goes right back to your original story of saying, I felt like I was being authentic, but this was the impression that I was making,
Yeah.
and then just trying to figure that out. So, speaking of that, that kind of goes into the idea of, steps that we can take. And I think you've mentioned some of them along the way in our conversation. But step number one for someone today is like, okay, how do I embrace my authenticity a bit more? What would you say to that?
I mean, this is like the crappiest answer ever just because no one wants to do it. I don't want to do this. But I realize when I sit down with myself, actually sit down and be quiet. But if I really take an honest look at what I'm doing or how I'm showing up, there's something that's going to immediately stand out to you that's inauthentic with who you know yourself to be. whether that's how you show up in your marriage or how treating a kid, or how, what you said to that client. Like there's something that is going to have a rub that you're immediately going to think about.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where you start. It's not like you overhaul yourself overnight and I'm like, ta-da, the authentic me is here. Like, I don't think that's what's going to happen. I'm sorry. Let me just give you that heads up.
But if it does, you have to message me right away. Call me. I will take your calls anytime.
I'm like imagining a mariachi band like behind them when they
yes,
right, like showing up. Probably because we've been listening to mariachi music for 12 hours today.
Yeah.
So I think, but honestly, it's like that first, like we all know there's something, but we've probably never acknowledged it. Like, and it's just baby steps. It's not like you rip the Band-Aid off and you're this new person, right? It's like, what's the first thing that stands out? That's going to probably be the most like, oh, like that's something I need to acknowledge because it's in my head. It's my subconscious. There's something about it that I've never been willing to dive into, or I've not been willing to like push back against, because it's usually a boundary that's been crossed that we're not willing to speak up. I usually find that's kind of the first authenticity barrier, that's been tested, is like there's a boundary we said yes or no to that we shouldn't have said yes or no to.
Right.
And we're sitting with that choice. And so once we like own that, again, back to the owning thing about what are your boundaries, or what are you like, I think that's kind of where the first step is.
I think that's not as crappy as you thought it was.
I know. People don't want to sit by themselves, but
I know it's the distinction between what's the first step, and that first step might be a doozy because we're talking about reflection. But again, it's
not like, I'm not going to tell you to like go become a monk or like go sit in like a chapel, or like this could be like a couple, like while you're driving, like while you're not thinking, listening to podcasts, not listening to our beautiful podcast, like sometime just ask yourself the question and you're going to feel it come up immediately. You don't have to like sit and journal with your left hand or any of that mumbo jumbo. Just listen to yourself.
Exactly. And when you reflect, and when I say reflect, it doesn't have to be that hard. Like Mallory said, it's not necessarily that you are going to meditate for hours, but when you're reflecting in a quiet moment, and that may be the challenge, but I think it's an important challenge for you to find some quiet moments to reflect once in a while. Think about it, and I'll bet you 2020 has plenty of information to share with you. Because there are a lot of times for checking in, it's like check yourself kind of thing, a lot of opportunities to check in. So I think that's a great first step. And just know that you're not alone, and also that your people are out there. We might be your people. If any of the things we've said today, and I'm hopeful that, a number of the listeners who are already here are probably like, yeah, we're in for the real stuff.
And I think also like trust, like if you're like, that's my person, don't be like, I don't know, they're like a stranger. Like lean into that, because there's something there that you're looking for or craving, I think, in your life, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that, so I joke, some of my closest friendships I've ever had happened spontaneous. This is not typically who I am, but it seems to happen this way. My college one, and like as an adult friend, my two closest ones that I still have, I literally saw them. They were strangers. I was in a new place. I walked over and said, hey, we're going to be best friends now. Like, I don't know why those words came out of my mouth. Like I like forced myself on someone, like we're now best friends. And like, that's how, like, I just was drawn to them. There was something I knew I had to say. So if you're feeling that about anybody, about like, if you just like, you know what, there's a really good vibe about them, or there's just something about, I can't stop watching her videos, or I would love to meet that person I keep seeing at the park, or whatever that looks like, just, I want to just give people permission to just step into that relationship. You don't have to put a label or a name or an outcome. Just see what happens. There's something there for you.
Yep. And all of this goes back to that self-awareness, that paying attention really of what is attracting you and what is feeling, off for you.
Right.
And when you pay attention to those things, I think that'll totally help you step into your authenticity. Awesome. I think this is the best time to wrap things up with yet more fun. Like this wasn't fun enough. So let's have a little fill in the blank for me here, starting with, I know this is going to be difficult for you because I want you to come out of your shell and like just really loosen up here, Mallory. Okay. Yep. Deep breaths. Okay. The song that always makes me dance is...
Okay. Yes, I did think about these questions. That's right. This came to me because I actually started doing this. So I cannot dance to save my life. I don't even know the name of the song. Oh, it's like by 50 Cent. It's the whole like, to the windows, to the walls, right? So my
Yes.
college roommates were from LA. I was like from Podunk, Ohio. We were in Texas, and they kept taking me to the park, and I was the only one that had a car, and they would, in my little Honda, they would blast this through my car and try to teach me moves. So that always, like, I can only dance for maybe 30 seconds and it is not good, but that's like the one song I'm like, yes, we got this. Like, this is the one thing. So that's the song that immediately was like, this is the one I know. That and like Milkshake Brings All the Boys to the Yard. That's another one. I'm sorry. That's just kind of what I was attracted to, that kind of music. I'm like,
All right.
a little bit of rap or Airbnb.
I have to go with your first choice, and that's pretty fantastic.
Yeah.
And yet again, not a duplicate from anyone else. So. Awesome. Okay. Next question, or next fill in the blank, is the quote or mantra I share all the time is.
Oh, this is good. I wanted to pull this up, so I got it right. So actually, I have two that I share. One is, you don't have to get it perfect. You just have to get it going. I always joke that I'm going to get that tattooed to the inside of my arm because as a recovering perfectionist, I like to call myself, I see this trip up people all the time. Like if you would just take that first step and not think about it, I think we overthink it. You get so much more done. You know, you take that step to that friend you want to meet, right? You're not scared when you do that. So that's one of them. And the other one that I really like to tell people is wherever you are, be there. And again, that's like another, I have to like, these are words I have to speak over myself because I think it's really, really easy as women for us to always be going to the next thing, or like we're multitaskers and always planning, And so especially in this COVID season and just learning as a mom, just learning how to be present and whatever that looks like when that moment and that's been really, really helpful for me to just wherever I am, I can just be in that moment and that's okay. Like that's permission for myself.
That mindfulness is so very important, and it's very hard for us, but when we do it, it makes a huge difference. Okay. Let's finish off with a resource, book, or app that makes my life easier.
Okay, I'm going to have to go with Voxer. I know that's kind of like a weird businessy one, but I'm loving it because there's something about being able to hear the way people talk as opposed to just using like a text app. I am loving, because everyone knows I sing-song things. And so when I get to leave sing-song messages to people every single day, it makes me happy for one, but also it helps me stay connected. So I don't just use it for work, I use it for all kinds of people. And so I love that app because it allows me to talk and sing and be connected. And it's not just, texting or, those social media and all that kind of stuff.
And to be authentic.
I always have to sing.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. And lastly, but not leastly, what or whom are you grateful for today, Mallory?
Oh, I am grateful for my husband today. He doesn't get enough credit. He's upstairs wrangling our 4 children with the piñata. So I am grateful for him because I think for a lot of people, probably you really get to see what you're made of when like COVID pandemic strikes. And so it's been a really interesting way to see who are we again when we're forced together all the time, and how do we parent, and when we can't just go to our corners and work. So he's really re-shown me who he is and how he does stuff, and so I'm very grateful for him.
I love that. And I am grateful for you. You know that, but I'm still saying it again and again.
Thank you.
So where can we find you online? Where can we come hang out with you? Because I know that others will want to. I do.
Absolutely.
Want them to come join us.
I am always on Facebook. I have a Facebook Facebook group called the Girl Boss Club. I have my podcast, which you can listen to Lisa on. She is episode number 1. Not only is she is it the first episode, so there's a lot of downloads, but she's like consistently been probably almost my top episode ever. I'm just going to say that. But the Marketing Magic podcast, and who knows, by the time you're listening to this, I may actually be on Instagram, folks, and there will be a link in your show notes. You can swipe up if you can find me on Instagram. I might be a big girl and try a new platform.
Or just find me and ask, or find me and I'll send you to her because I'll always be stalking her.
Yes.
Wonderful. This has been fantastic. Thank you, Mallory, for shining your light in this world and for sharing it with us.
Thank you.
Authenticity is the daily practice of letting go who we think we should be and embracing who we are. Brene Brown. Thank you for joining me on the Positively Living podcast. Your time is precious, and I'm honored you chose to spend it with me. Would you like to further explore the topics you've heard and implement what inspires you? Could you use some coaching support? What if you could attend a private Q&A with my guests and access bonus content? You can do all that and more in the Positively Living membership community. Check the link in the show notes or head to positivelyproductive.com/membership to enroll. I look forward to having you join me next episode and in the community. Until then, keep it positive and keep making space for what matters most.